Hello, City of Chubbuck. My name is Devin Hillam, and I am the Director of the Community Services Department. I'm going to talk to you today about how land use policies affect property taxes and utility rates, and the things that we're doing to address that. But before I do, I'd first like to introduce the department. We have 4 divisions within the Community Services Department. The first one, in no particular order, is the Planning Department. The Planning Department oversees land use applications like rezones, annexations, conditional use permits, planned unit developments, and creative community zoning and variances. These are the individuals that are running the staff reports when you might come to our Land Use and Development Commission, really kind of wrangling those items. If you are submitting for a new business and a site plan, they will be the ones that are working for the Design Review Committee. The next up is the Development Services Division. These are our staff members that work on new subdivision applications, seeing them from beginning to end, looking at utility infrastructure that's installed along the way, that which is going to be dedicated to the public to make sure that it meets our standards and our specifications. Next is the Building Department. This one is fairly self-explanatory. They are the folks who handle our inspections for commercial and residential, along with the permitting processes there. And finally is the Economic Development Division. This department works with existing and new businesses as those come in to help make sure that they can have the best experience possible in the city of Chubbuck. With regards to our land use and our land development policies, everything that we do is guided by the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan. Within those policies, we aim to help create walkable and thriving neighborhoods. We aim to create active and vibrant commercial areas, and really to push for financially sustainable development. When we say financially sustainable development, we wonder what things can we do to help create more value for a lower cost down the road. Some of those items that we're going to talk about briefly today include infill regulations, parking lot standards, annexation and new development standards, land intensity standards, etc. When we think about financially sustainable, we have to ask, financially sustainable for whom? And the ultimate answer for that in any government, whether it is a city or a county, is that is the rate and the taxpayer. Very simply, at the highest level, property taxes are the result of the cost of the desired service or infrastructure divided by the number of property owners or rate users on a system. At a government policy level, we aim to create policies that are fair, policies that are effective, policies that are efficient, and policies that are economical. Within land use, we have an opportunity to adjust and affect all 4 of those criteria, but the one I want to talk to you today in particular is about efficiencies. And that is how land use efficiencies affect the cost of services. At its core, how can we do more with less? If a county or city can be more efficient, it should mean a decreased tax rate. And in land use and development, that means looking at some of those policies that I spoke about already. Here is a really simple example of what I mean by efficiencies. Let's assume a scenario down a certain road or a water line or a sewer line, and let's just assume in this case it's 1,000 feet long, and that is a road. And on that road we have 3 houses. Let's make an assumption that it costs the city $5,000 a year to provide services down that road. Services may include sanitation, it may include police patrols, road maintenance and reconstruction, etc. In terms of paying for that $5,000 per year by those 3 property owners, that turns into about $1,667 per property owner per year. However, that does not include additional costs that might be incurred by other taxing districts. In our case, using a city example, we could be talking about the cost of running school buses down that road for school children, for the school district, or other taxing districts that might run down that road and provide services such as might exist with the Bannock County Assessor. From an operational standpoint, we may be able to find ways to decrease some costs. Some of those costs might be increasing our standards to decrease the road maintenance costs over time, or we may be able to find a tool that requires one person to do a job instead of two. Under that same example, it could theoretically decrease the cost annually from $5,000 to $4,000. The result of that on the property owner per year would change their burden to $1,334 per property owner per year to cover that cost. Land use efficiencies are also part of the equation. Under the first example, after we looked at ways to save operational costs, we ended up with 1,000 feet of road that resulted in a $4,000 annual cost, which resulted in a $1,334 cost to the property owners along that road. Through our land use policies, we could create some changes that decrease those costs even further. Using the same amount of road, that 1,000 feet, with an annual cost of $4,000, that could be dropped to a theoretical $667 per property owner if we took some land use changes. In this example, we double the density of that neighborhood. But increasing the density is not always the way that we can accomplish this. And in terms of density, it doesn't always mean that we're adding new houses and new lots. Some of the things that we can look at and that we have been looking at the City of Chubbuck include our infill development standards. Infill is the development of underdeveloped or undeveloped properties that are within the city. We can look at our policies for fringe growth, those new subdivisions on the edges of the city. We can look at our underutilized parking lots. And then we can look at our underutilized buildings and our individual residential or commercial lots for opportunities to add efficiencies to the system. Just like many other cities across the nation, historically, the new growth in Chubbuck really has shifted to the fringe of the city and in areas that have been recently annexed. But that begs the question, what happens to that existing infrastructure on those areas that remain undeveloped or underdeveloped that simply get skipped over as part of that expansion process at the city level? Here's a slightly older map of the city of Chubbuck. Can you identify any areas that are within the boundaries of the city, but that are underdeveloped or undeveloped, that may have existing roads, sewer, and water infrastructure currently already available to those lots? Here's a map that we created specifically to look at developed, underutilized, and vacant properties within the city of Chubbuck's boundaries. You may have identified some of these properties in looking at the prior slide, but you may notice that there certainly is a significant portion within the current limits of the city of Chubbuck that meets the underutilized, vacant, or undeveloped classifications that could be prime for redevelopment or infill. You will notice that some of these areas are in areas that could be developed for commercial purposes, and some are in areas that could be developed for residential purposes. Some of these are simply remnant parcels that existed prior to the city really experiencing its growth that were developed as primarily rural residential lots, but simply as the city has grown, they've been surrounded by more tightly packed, denser development. Here, using county property tax records, we were able to do a land use value analysis to really look at the value per acre that we're getting while we look at our infill opportunities across the city. Those items that are in green are those that have a higher value per acre, and those items that are in red are those that have a low value per acre, and those that are gray have an extremely low value per acre. You'll notice that many of those same areas that were considered undeveloped or undeveloped lie within the bottom tier categories, showing that there's an opportunity that if we redevelop those over time, or develop them, that we could drive that tax base up to create more efficiencies within that existing built system that could result in decreased tax liabilities and rate liabilities within the city of Chubbuck. Because infill is so critical to helping increase efficiencies for the delivery of services, we are reviewing and amending our codes to help continue to make infill development cost-effective for developers, but we're working hard to ensure that new infill will be better designed with better buildings and developments that blend with the surrounding area and neighborhoods, and that also achieve the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. In addition to infill, we're also working to create codes to better enable homeowners with vacant spaces in their homes or on their lots to create granny flats or accessory dwelling units or apartment units. We're using the same guiding principle that when land is not used as efficiently as it could be over time, that the cost of providing services will be higher than it could have been otherwise. That principle applies in our analysis of our annexation policy, of our analysis on fringe development or that new development, whether it's residential or commercial on the edges of the city, and in our reviews of our parking lot standards across the city. To use parking lots as an example, so often parking lot standards have been dictated across the nation, setting minimum standards for buildings as they come in under building permits or as uses change. This has created some issues, however, as markets have shifted and as trends have changed to now, where a parking lot may have been hustling and bustling 20 or 30 years ago, now that parking lot sits largely vacant most of the time of the year. And so there may be some opportunities to look at redevelopment of that parking lot to create additional buildings or infrastructure on that site that would benefit and raise that tax base that then could assist in increasing that efficiency that then could decrease that overall tax liability or rate liability across the city. And finally, to wrap it up, I hope you have a safe and happy weekend, and thank you for joining. If you'd like to explore any of these concepts in more detail, I would urge you to check out the nonprofit organization Strong Towns. They have a lot of excellent information. I would strongly recommend their curbside chat